Hello guys, welcome back to Writer's Tales, The Last Adventures, number 28, The Rued Morgue. We are in, well, Los Angeles, but an alternative version of Los Angeles actually. Very futuristic, flying cars, lots of heavy, powerful architecture, like silver architecture, and it's meant to be 2013. But it's not 2013 we're used to, as we know in the past. The protagonists are sort of bemused because it happened in the last story as well, with going to New York in 2006 when the tsunami and iceberg sort of happened, and caused civilization to live among the surface. Here, everything's all futuristic, very sort of like the world of Demolition Man. Very similar, very sort of a similar thing with that. Very clean cut, very sort of pristine, and just extremely futuristic. But we don't know what the thing is. We don't know what the problem is. They say they're in 2013 of our time. Instead, they get, something like this really. So we come onto a morgue, of course, attended by 6 morgue attendants who actually are Sontarans. Funny enough, the Sontarans, they've actually, during one of their conquests between the Rutans, they crash land on Earth, and but the memories of war have been gone. I think due to this, some serious, strong injuries, of course, that they actually sustained. But they survived their injuries, but they don't remember anything about the war or anything. They're like war veterans, but they sort of gone off the war very much. That sort of thing. It's like they're, if you're severely injured or anything else, that sort of thing, it's like you can't remember much really. So like Vietnam veterans really, in a type of way, but Vietnam veterans tend to remember everything, of course, and of course, really suffer from PTSD really, to be honest, Yeah, something like that. Post-traumatic stress, that sort of thing. PTSD, no, I don't know. I forgot about that. I just remember now PTSD, that sort of thing. So obviously they're the morgue attendants. They tend to some of the highest rated morgues, corpses really, and just basically just bring them out, that sort of thing. Maybe cremate people as well, that sort of thing. It's the sort of thing they've been doing for a while actually, and obviously they're some tyrants, but they still got their armor on, strangely. But they wear like greenish gowns, of course, like PVC type gowns really, or like aprons or something, surgical type stuff that they wear, just like 3-finger rubber gloves, pink rubber gloves that they wear, and just tend to bodies really, of course. However, this instance, they get bring in a corpse of a dead tramp or a dead hobo, of course, who's been killed, been shot actually. But once they looked into it, of course, through this rotting corpse filled with flies and stuff, like pure dead bearded tramp really, that sort of thing, who stinks of piss and everything. They end up finding something horrible in his organs, and once touching it, they suddenly get infected by this like little infection or something, and that triggers, and what that actually does. This virus, of course, is actually a flesh-eating virus that turns people into a flesh eater. It has a craving for flesh, really. And the Sontarans get this caught when they dissect the corpse, and some of it squidges out, of course, and lands them and gets them in the face, really. Well, it gets one of them first. Then I think they still carry on the procedure, but afterwards, he starts turning a bit rabid, really, and takes out all the rest of them actually. Even though they try and rugby tackle him, he bites them, and that causes them to turn into like terrible flesh eaters actually. So you have like 6 flesh eating Sontarans in a morgue somewhere. You've got a family a family who are basically trying to mourn the death of their grandmother really, who want to see her cremated, of course, or that sort of thing, really. And they get ambushed and get eaten. Well, sort of partly eaten, of course, and basically end up with, and of course, sort of again turn against, really. So they become like flesh-eating virus infected, really. Basically, and just turn into like some tyrants are, really. So they end up starting to run amok around the morgue, of course. But they sort of die out quickly. They do, for the because with this virus, of course, you have to eat flesh sort of instantly, really, in a way, really. You have to eat it instantly. Whereas this family don't, because they don't really, the only thing they can probably eat is their grandmother, really, but nothing else, really. But they sort of starve out very quickly, starve to death very quickly, of course. Like, just, they're so infected for about 20 minutes or so, and afterwards they sort of drop dead. Whereas some tyrants, I think because they're alien, they're sort of different. Their sort of biology is completely different. So they end up staying a bit more longer than do. And basically end up running amok in Los Angeles to sort of break out, they do, and basically just terrorise the citizens, of course. The protagonists, of course, team up with a police officer known as, what's his name? Darren, of course, known as Darren. Well, his surname's Darren, we don't know his first name, so he's an officer, of course, who's actually based on Christopher Reeve, of course. So think of Christopher Reeve in Demolition Man, something like that, mixed together with with a bit of an infection rate going on in this one, or the virus, and then there we go. So they team up with him, they take down the infected, sometimes, of course, who are basically just like, they don't use weapons or guns or anything, they just use the brute force and, of course, their mouths, of course, with the virus, and it's basically trying to nibble people, of course. What it's basically doing is, they're nibbling them, infecting them, and also slowly killing them off, really, the humans, that sort of thing. And they basically just carry on with that, really. So yeah, that's really what the Rued Morgue is, actually. It's just that type of story. Obviously, the name comes from a painting, like a documentary painting with some tyrants called the Rued Morgue, that I found. I thought, that was interesting. It's like a canvas painting with some tyrants on it, like with the helmets on and everything else. I thought, interesting. So I went with that anyway. The whole Los Angeles 2013 look of it was actually comes from that an art done by Sid Mead. I think that's how you say it. Sid Mead from 1988. I first came across this from a filmmaker from Kendall called Giuseppe Abba, who actually posted on his YouTube channel. Back then, he did quite a bit of YouTube, really. Short films, bit of random vlogs and stuff. I did some random stuff, random stuff for the moment, really, for him, really, at that time. And he mentioned what 2013 might look like, actually. And he said, well, in 2013, we were expecting more than Scott, and he showcased this little piece of art. Of course, this is from the Los Angeles, was it LA Times? It must have been, actually. It's a 1988 LA Times cover, and that really inspired what this Los Angeles might look like in alternative version. So it's a two-handed. This is, of course, you have Ice and Iron, of course, in New York in 2006, which is like sort of tsunami ridden, obviously just like an ice age, of course, like everyone's just living an ice age, like this, but like the Stone Age, really, in a type of way, like end of civilization as we know it. And then you come to 2013 Los Angeles. It's very sort of clean, pristine, futuristic, very sort of colourful as well. When you look at it, it's like the bare future, really, sort of. And I thought, yeah, it'd be a pretty interesting idea to go on. So that's what I do, really. So the Rued Morgue is very much that sort of thing, that sort of story. Nothing else to say, really, but there you go. So that's the Rued Morgue, No 28. Thank you guys for watching. As always, see you for the next video, and see you later.